it's Nita here from Bouncebackability. So one of the big questions that we often get asked around mental health is the impact of social media. To what extent is social media good for our mental health? At what point does it become not so good for our mental health? And so I thought I would jump on today and just take you through a couple of different perspectives to think about whilst you're engaging in social media. Okay, so before we consider the impact of social media specifically, or the media on mental health, let's just remind ourselves what we actually mean by our mental health. So our mental health is about our brains operating in a way, so our thought processes, how we feel, our emotional states, etc., how we respond to certain things, and being in a really good place. And so a key question, and this isn't just linked to social media, but a key question to always ask yourself is what I'm feeling right now, is it helpful? What I'm doing right now, is it helpful to my emotional state, or is it not helpful? And so, for example, on social media, if what's happening is you're reading stuff and getting a heightened level of anxiety, or you're feeling a little bit depressed over stuff, then arguably that question is going to give you that indication to stop what you're doing and go and focus on something else. Okay, so when can social media be really helpful? Well, as a human being, we have a need, a drive to feel connected to other human beings, to family and friends. And of course, for a lot of people, social media takes away a degree of isolation. It creates connectedness. We're able to keep in touch with family and friends when ordinarily we may not have the time to do that. So from that perspective, and if what you're reading is filling you with joy over, people's announcements of babies and weddings or holiday snaps that just kind of get you into a really good place, then that's a really good example of when you kind of ask that question, is what I'm reading right now, is it helpful? And if it is, then that's really good stuff for you to be focused on. Okay, so when might social media be less helpful? Well, there's lots of examples. I'm going to give you a couple today. So self-acceptance and self-esteem is really critical. They're both critical elements to our mental health, and that's the ability to accept ourselves for who we are, and also to have a good level of self-esteem, to feel worthy as a human being. And one of the social media traps that we can get into is social comparison. So if we're constantly looking then at other people's holiday snaps, which I talked about as being a good thing, but if we get into a thought pattern where we're constantly then comparing that to our lives and feeling that actually our lives are less important or less value, or we don't feel as worthy, or we don't feel that we're getting as much in our life as other people, then that's a not so helpful thought pattern. And again, what that is likely to induce is heightened feelings of worthlessness, possibly depression, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed with what's going on in other people's lives versus your own. So again, when you ask yourself that question, is this helpful or not helpful? Actually, it may not be helpful for you, and therefore that would be an indicator to stop doing that. The last thing I want to touch on in this video today is also a concept called the social media bubble. And it's a really it's a clever trap that social media can get us into. So for all your likes, when you open up a headline, share a document, there are some complex algorithms within the social media mechanisms that then dictate what you see next. And what can happen is you can get yourself in a real bubble and not see anything outside of that bubble. So if you're constantly at the moment, for example, clicking on, all of the reports around how many deaths are in the world, what that means is you're going to see more of that and more of that and more of that. And what can happen is you see that to the exclusion of everything else. So you're in this kind of bubble entrapment. And again, if you are reading things and you're going, oh my God, it feels like this is constantly what's in the social media feed, then you need to break that bubble. So how do you do that? Well, it's being mindful what you do like, and actually a strategy that they talk about is like everything, because it really confuses the algorithms. And be also really careful what you share, because actually it's what other people are sharing that you're looking at and possibly feeling not so great from a mental health perspective. And equally, that could be the same for, you may feel like you're being really helpful to somebody, showing the video of, I don't know, the COVID-19 wards in a hospital. And I get it. And I get you do that out of a really good intention. But if somebody's in one of those social media bubbles, which is all that they see, that's really going to increase and heighten their anxiety. So be mindful of this social media bubble trap that we can fall into. Listen, it's a really great question to ask, isn't it, around, what is the impact of social media and our mental health? And there's lots of studies out there, and some are suggesting, yes, at times, for example, to connect and not feel isolated, social media is a really helpful and good thing to get involved in. But also, as I've talked about today, there are a couple of traps that we might fall into that might not be so great for our mental health. Just remember, mental health doesn't mean you've got a mental health disorder in any way. It just means that we're looking after how well our brains operate and work for us. Until next time.